Good morning, everyone. This is Truman with True Technical Partners, and I have the privilege of introducing Dave Stelzl. Dave is a CISO, and for those people who might not know what CISO is, he's a Chief Information Security Officer. He's also a author of several books on cybersecurity. And Dave was happy enough, I don't know, maybe happy might not be the best term, Dave, but he's willing to be able to come in and talk to us a little bit more about how cybersecurity is so important to us in our mobile usage and our applications and so forth. Dave is the author of Digital Money and Data at Risk. So I wanted to talk to Dave about how we're able to protect our data, and I wanted to talk about the different ways or methods that we can help to protect one another. To protect our data and our systems. So I'm going to go over a few things here. When we're talking about data risk, in our experience here at True Technical Partners, there's two types of customers. One type of customer who's been hacked and knows it, and those are the types of customers that we read about every day in the papers. It could be a Target, it could be anybody, and now you also are now seeing that through some of the Apple ads that they're very concerned about the privacy of their own systems, and everybody's thought that Apple was never to be hacked. Well, that's false. That's why now you'll see these ads running on about the Apple platform and to be able to protect your privacy. And so the other type of customer is the customer who's been hacked and doesn't know it. So that's the purpose of this talk today with Dave Stelzl, is to talk about the other ways to protect yourself when you have been hacked, but you have no idea that there's a threat in your system using key loggers and so forth to be able to collect data on you. So with that, I wanted to talk to Dave about what are the activities that are taking place in the office, but also as well as out of the office, because everybody is so mobile and everybody is 24/7 connected. So we want to know what type of activities are going on in the office, outside of the office, what exposure there is to your data, and especially in the areas that people might not even be thinking about. Dave, what are some of those activities that you see that are at risk?
Yeah, well, that's actually a really big question, right? There's a lot of things people are doing, and when I think about the average office worker, it's tempting to get really technical and start talking about all the different hacks and stuff out there. But really, if you just think about the average office worker who's coming into work, and again, they might be on the road as well or working out of their home, they're just trying to get their job done, right? And the thing that a lot of people don't really recognize is that while they're getting their job done, everything they're doing, pretty much everything, even driving their car to work, is creating data in the cloud somewhere. Okay, so all day long, everything I do, everywhere I go, my phone is tracking where I am. There's all kinds of stuff happening, and I'm just creating data everywhere. So if I'm not aware of how I'm creating data and what kind of data I'm creating all the time, then I don't really think at all about how secure everything is. So that right there is kind of a problem, and just not thinking that all the time I'm creating data. If I search for something online, I send an email, I send a text message, I leave a voicemail, I drive somewhere in my car, make a payment, I use a rewards card somewhere. I'm just constantly creating data everywhere I go. But let's talk about some of the places where there's maybe some bigger holes than other places. One of the things that really strikes me is a lot of people working from home right now. And in fact, I was just talking to a guy who was setting up a network for an executive in his company. It's a big company, and his executive is going to be working out of his house, and so he's setting up this network. And I'm just thinking about my own home network and how hard it is for someone non-technical to support their own house network. And a lot of people don't realize it. That telecom guy comes over and he puts in your cable modem, right? So he pops this cable modem in and he says, okay, so this is going to create your wireless network inside, and you should be able to connect your computers to it. And here's an example of how to do it. I can get a few of these guys connected online and so forth. And I've of course had this done at my house, and you probably have had it done at your house.
Correct,
and
yeah.
it puzzles me that when he tells me the password on the router, in fact, he probably won't even tell me the password unless I ask, but I always ask. So what's the password on the router that you just installed there that's, combined router modem? Oh, it's admin. Okay. So I write that down somewhere and stick it away, and then he leaves. Well, everybody in this whole neighborhood has the password admin on their router in their house. That's their wireless. Yeah, it's not the wireless network to get on, but it is the router password. Okay. And once I get in, all my data is going through that router, and that right there is a problem. Now, it's also, not hard to get onto somebody's network in their house. A lot of people don't think about, well, what kind of encryption am I using? Am I up to date? Have I patched the firmware on my router modem? And you've probably seen ads over articles over the past couple of years about people hacking in, mass hacks into people's network routers at their house. Okay, it's a perfect entry point, and nobody's thinking about this, even though it's in the news. And I bet if you went out and asked anybody in your neighborhood, did you change the password on your router modem? The answer would be no.
Right.
Another thing that's interesting is a lot of the, I go to Starbucks a lot because I'm on the road, and that's a good place for me to go and work and everything. And, I know what the network is at my local Starbucks, but, it'd be easy for someone to just put a 1 on the end of that and set up their own little network in a coffee shop. And people don't think about that either, how easy it would be for me just to do that, or just leaving my computer. I see a lot of people leave their computer open on something that might be sensitive data and head over to the restroom, and they're gone for 5 minutes, and it's just sitting wide open there, and nobody thinks about that. That's a big deal. Now, here's one of the things that really concerns me, this little guy right here, because while companies are trying to at least provide something like antivirus software or something like that for their laptop, very few companies do anything about this little guy right here. And there's a couple of big problems with it. One is compromises on certain brands of phones are pretty prevalent.
Prevalent, okay? Yep, they are.
And what are we doing on this thing? I'm banking. I'm sending a lot of email on this little device here. I'm getting attachments and viewing them, which means they're stored on this little guy right here. And then when I leave the company, not only is there no protection on this guy, but I take this whole thing with me. And, what do you do about that? The companies have to put a policy in place. They're not allowed to just take my phone from me and erase it. I got a lot of personal stuff on this little guy right here. So when I leave a company, taking it with me, and anything I've downloaded, my millions of emails and stuff is going with me. And if there's confidential information in there, I'm taking that with me, So that's a big deal. And I think the more we get into mobility, people using their own laptops at work, using their own tablets, using their own smartphones, they're collecting all this data. They're not thinking about security. It's not secured by the company. They're working on their home network, and then they're letting their kids use their devices, and their kids are connecting to games and downloading music and illegal music and setting up peer-to-peer networks. And my whole point is nobody's actually got control over any of these devices that are mobile, and that right there is just an enormous, enormous hole in the whole thing. So there's a lot we could go on, but right there, that one thing just is out of control.
That's very true, because within one of our vertical markets that we support is the legal field, and a lot of attorneys work from home. They might have some things to do at night with them that didn't have time enough to do at the office, so they get on those networks, and we have found that they are not secured, and they're exposed by what all of their children are also doing on the inside. And that's why hackers go after Facebook accounts and looking for, trying to find somebody on there, and see what their kids are doing, and then they connect to their kids and they get into the inside network. So there's a huge risk there with everything within that is involved in the security of just your home network. Well, they carry that on to your businesses because of the everybody has the phone, has a notebook, has whatever it is in order to be able to communicate to the company, and they're going right into the company emails, and so that opens them up. So yeah, it is. Well, then it's a big risk. So there's another thing, well, then, that I wanted to talk about in your book. In your book, you talk about data aggregation.
Mm.
And can you expand on that? Well, then you were talking about that, having all your data out there, you're exposed greatly to places. I mean, even a Facebook, and that's been all over the paper. That you're not safe, that they're selling your data and so forth. Can you talk a little bit on that and see how we can prevent that from happening?
Yeah, so that goes back to the comment I made about everyone's collecting my data. And, I think there's a lot of people out there, especially if you grew up in one of the younger generations and you're just used to always being online and always being on Facebook. It doesn't occur to a lot of people. In fact, a lot of times I'll ask people about their data, and their comment is like, well, nobody cares about that data. Now, when you mention the word aggregation, it's like it's like, I don't know why this came to mind, but it's kind of like young people don't seem to understand the exponential equation either. What is compounded interest? Nobody understands the concept. Well, the concept of aggregation is, if I can collect all of your data, then I have computers out there that can analyze that data. And the more data I have, what people don't realize is that you are defined by your data. So, when I call any customer service line, I call my cell phone company, I call for computer support, I call my bank, I call anybody, how are they validating me? They're validating me on data that they have about me. Now, if I start looking at all my data out there and I look at it as an individual piece, I went to the grocery store today. Okay, it's in my phone. I went to the grocery store today. Nobody really cares about that. But when I take 15 or 20,000 different data pieces, which is what data aggregation has on everybody at least, okay, all of a sudden a computer can piece together all kinds of things about what you think about, what you believe, what you like, what you don't like, what time you get up in the morning, what time you go to bed, when you're on vacation, when you're at home, when you're at work, what your family looks like. I mean, really, I can profile you. You talk about profiling. I can profile you down to some very minute details, and people don't believe that. That's the key thing right there. I mean, I tell people that, and they're like, really? I mean, they don't really believe that. But artificial intelligence is quite intelligent and quite good at doing that. So think about some of the things that I can do if I have all your data and I've pieced it together. I've pieced together bits and pieces of it. I can go out and I can take loans out in your name. I can get a credit card approved in your name. I can buy a house on your name. I mean, I can do some pretty significant financial things in your name. I can send out email from you, right? I can take over an email account. I mean, certainly we've all gotten email from somebody we know that turned out to be fraudulent.
Yes,
and sometimes it's obvious. But what happens when somebody starts, giving directives that only you can give? Starts bad mouthing something out there, or starts, telling employees there's going to be a big layoff, or just anything that you're allowed to do that you don't want to do.
It's interesting that you bring that up, Dave, because I have a customer, and the accounting person got an email from the president who was traveling and said, I'm doing business here. I need you to deposit it was over $50,000. It wasn't an even number. It was a number that was pretty much that, okay, yeah, I guess that could be true. And I need you to send it to this banking to this assignment. So he had everything correct on it. The email looked just like what he would say. So the CFO, the accounting person, did do it. So they lost, it was $50-something thousand. But to your point is, these people, when they got hacked, they see how they type, how they act. They also knew that he was in a certain spot because it was on his calendar because he had it as an out of office. So they knew that he was traveling. So people kind of looked at it and said, well, yeah, he's traveling. You know, I know that he's traveling. And they did it. So these are some of the things you talk about AI, that they get so much data that they can almost be you.
Right.
And that's the issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example. That's exactly what I'm seeing.
Yeah, exactly. So so out of all of these issues within that we're seeing, what are some of the habits or activities that people must change in order to keep their data safe?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that I think are becoming maybe more prevalent out there. First of all, if I run a business, because you mentioned some of these guys who run businesses or like the legal profession, I think it's really important for those people to know where their data is and who has access to it. Is going to be one really important factor.
Segregate
So
it
that,
out.
so there's some accountability on who's doing what with what kind of data. And then there's a lot of advancements being made right now in terms of how we access data and what keeps us from accessing it. So of course, passwords have been the age-old thing, but moving into things of like two-factor authentication, where I'm getting a code on my phone in order to log in, that's a pain in the neck. It is, it's an extra step. Nobody really wants to have to do that. If you forget your phone at home, you're like really in trouble, right? Because you can't get the code back. But on the other hand, this, social media and all that kind of, an AI computer can even guess what a person's password might be. That's scary. Okay.
Correct.
So two-factor authentication, knowing where my data is, and I'm really encouraging companies to start moving. And I know your company provides, tools and services to monitor, to watch 24/7 what's going on a network. I just feel like the adoption, I'd love your comment on this, but it feels like the adoption of that is slow because people don't see the need and they think their firewall and their password are good enough. But the truth is, you really need to be watching. And that's
Correct.
what the data the risk book is all about. Watch.
Yeah. Well, you know what, a firewall is great and it's needed, but what we've kind of associated the firewall to is a turnstile going into a baseball game. And you go walking in and you got a ticket and the guy scans you. Oh yeah, it's a good ticket, and you come in. The firewall's the exact same way. Well, then you log in, you authenticate, and they say, oh yeah, that sounds like you. Come on in. And those are some of the things that if you're not watching these and you don't have tools in place to be able to see, well, that is not a it's not a typical login, or else it's not. You can see that that it's written, that the code's written in a different manner. So so you're able to stop those and see what it is, and then either stop them or else let them to continue through. So that's what we've been seeing with our customers. But a lot of our customers are now with the two-factor authentication. Even though that they say it's a pain, they have found the people who we have put it in place, they said it's not that big of a deal the way that you can do with the other types of tools of vaults and so forth to be able to bring up a password. It isn't that much of a problem. But I wanted to talk about one more thing before we end our conversation. I have 3 daughters, and my middle one owes me some money, and I talked to her, hey, when are you going to pay me that money? She goes, I only pay my bills through Venmo. I go, Venmo? What's Venmo? And she goes, oh, it's an app. And I thought to myself, oh boy, okay, well, well then while I'm talking to her, I signed up for Venmo. And I said, okay, I got Venmo. Oh boy, was that a mistake. If you go to that Venmo account, you see people, I have no conceivable idea who they are, paying Sally or Dan or Bob or whoever it is, and I don't even know who these people are. Then I thought, okay, I got to shut this thing off because now I'm broadcasting. Can you make a comment? Did I do the right thing on trying to protect myself from that? Because that seems like a disaster that people just don't think, oh, who cares if I see Bob paying Sally?
Yeah, I've heard this from other folks, and I don't really know what all the security is behind Venmo, but it does concern me that you don't really know that it's broadcasting all your payments to some social media platform everybody's watching unless you lock it down. But it, you know, the default settings on that particular app are to broadcast everything that you've done, which of course creates more data for more people to see, for more people to profile. But I think it's even a bigger issue when I start to look at apps in general. I think people misunderstand, you know, who's behind the app, how much security is behind any given app that does anything really. And you know, if I mean, I don't want to say it because I don't want my phone to answer, but you know, if I call a certain name, this phone answers, right, and does what I tell it to do, like schedule
Right.
a meeting, right? Well, I don't think people realize, but that means that my phone is listening to me all the time. And it just so happens that Apple programmed that particular word in here for it to respond to that command and nothing else unless I say something similar to that word. But what that means is that somebody else could write an app for this phone that listens all the time, you know, or
Yes.
right,
Right.
my phone is listening to me all the time, or could be watching me all the time through this camera, right? Because these things are always on. So, you know, it's sort of, because this is new, people don't think that, you know, having a device inside your home that's listening to you, or a lot of our alarm systems today have a, you know, a woman or a man comes out on a loudspeaker. I had an issue like that just recently where we had something, you know, burning in the oven and there's smoke. The smoke alarm goes off when the lady comes on the loudspeaker and says, "Hey, do you need the fire department?" Well, that means that they really could be listening or, you know, a hacker certainly could take over the network and be listening and watching in your home, on your computer, on your phone, anytime. So my whole point is, you know, you really need to investigate these apps before you just decide to download something, put your banking information in it, start transferring money, and just assume that, well, you know, it's a published app, it must be okay. This is
Right.
absolutely the wrong thing to be doing. Okay.
Correct. Correct. Well, you know, Dave, I think that we did cover quite a bit today. You know about some of the concerns of, well, at least some of my customers have voiced some of these concerns, and I wanted to have the expert, you know, to will then help verify with them what we are talking to our customers about. And you know, security is the number one component that you should be concerned about. Will that, will moving forward, and it's only going to be uh, um, much more of your data at risk moving forward in the years to come. So I appreciate your time, and I know that we're going to have another meeting about some other products and some other topics here in the near future. So I appreciate your time.
All right. Well, thank you, Truman. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay secure, right?
Take care, Dave. Thank you.